We'll be talking about very basics of rotator cuff repair and how we can improve healing in the rotator cuff repair service. So, rotator cuff tear is the most common soft tissue injury that you encounter in your practice. It is a common injury typically in a middle-aged patient and typically in a patient who is in a higher age group. So the problem is the biological healing. So if you are operating some patient who is in more age and probably has some factors which will impede or which will decrease the healing, then you need to do something to increase the biological healing of the rotator cuff tissue. Now the basic concept here is that whenever you are repairing a rotator cuff, you need to repair the rotator cuff under low tension. So what that means is you need to repair the tissue in a way that the tissue is not into the tension, because if the tissue is in tension, it is more likely to give off or give it. So this is the most important thing, that you need to release the cuff tissue, because whenever there is a cuff tear, the cuff will go and retract back and it will be adhesed to the surrounding soft tissue, and that will lead to adhesions, and when you try to pull it and put anchors and just put it and tie it, it will be under tension. So important thing is you need to release the cuff from above. So you need to release the cuff from the soft tissue above, that is the acromion, and below, that is the glenoid. So you need to release it from the top and from the bottom. Now preparation of footprint is important because we need to improve the healing channel. So on the greater tuberosity, and I will also like to release a little bit of cartilage on the innermost margin, because what it does two things. One, it will expose the bony bed, and the second thing, it will increase the healing chances, because there is a good bone to tendon healing if you have a raw cancellous bone exposed. So that is one. This is a very important concept which many people forget: inclusion of inferior lamina. This is one of the most common indication that I do a revision rotator cuff repair with. So what happens is whenever there is a cuff, there are two laminas, and specifically if a surgeon is doing an open repair, he will just repair the upper lamina, and the lower lamina is not included, it is missed. And more commonly in 90% of the cases, you will have two lamina. So you will have an upper lamina and you have a lower lamina, and it is mandatory to include this inferior lamina. So we will be going on with pictures and videos of that. So inclusion of the inferior lamina is very important. So whenever you are doing a repair, be very clear in your mind that you must include the inferior lamina in your repair. So your bites must pass through the inferior lamina. So anchor fixation, if the tissue is in tension, if the rotator cuff is in tension, you can medialize the footprint by 1 centimeter. So you can do a medial placement of anchor. So this will do two things, as I told you. It will reduce the tension and it will expose a bony bed on which the tissue has got a good chances to heal. We will come to the repair technique and Crimson Dewey effect. So what is Crimson Dewey? Anybody knows? So there is a great surgeon, Steve Snyder. Steve Snyder is pioneering in shoulder arthroscopy and has written many books for shoulder arthroscopy, and he is a pioneer in doing a single door rotator cuff repair. So what he tells is this: so once you do the repair, you put small holes like this. So this is like the microfracture you do in the knee. So when you do a repair and you have a exposed tissue, exposed bone on the greater tuberosity, you put small holes like this, and this will increase the bleeding channels and this will increase the healing of the rotator cuff. So this is basically described by Steve Snyder, and this is very good in cases of single row repair. And even if I am doing a double row, at any time, if the greater tuberosity some part is exposed, it is not covered with the tissue, then I will do this small sort of a micro puncture on that area to increase the bony healing. So basically it provides the mesenchymal stem cells through microfracture. This is a philosophy. Now this is the thing I was talking about. So if you are repairing it under tension, you will see this picture. So the rotator cuff will pull out like this and your anchor will show like that. Okay. So this is the thing that you need to be very cautious. So never ever repair a rotator cuff in a tension. So a tension-free repair is the goal of success. So this is what we have done. We have done a re-repair of this like that. Now, as I told you, this is the margin of the cartilage with the bone. So you need to medialize it about 1 centimeter. And this is about our setup. We are doing it in the lateral position. So this we are looking from the top, And if you see here, you will see a number of portals, and this is one technique which will reduce the problem of knot or the suture entanglement. So you need to use more portals so that your sutures come out from different portals. So if all the sutures are coming from the same portal, then you will have a high chance of entanglement of sutures. So try to distribute your sutures on a wide margin. Now, to reduce tension, as I told you, margin convergence is very important. What is margin convergence?
If you have a large U-shaped tear, then we can convert
side to side,
medial side of
the
margin.
So there is normally what we do is this is a tear. This is a tear. You close it to the bone like this. In margin convergence, you close side to side, and then the remaining part you can repair like this. So if you do margin convergence, the force is around 75% reduced on the repair. So margin convergence will reduce the stress or reduce the tension of the repair. So probably we'll show you in one of the cases. Superior capsular releases. As I told you, the capsule between the glenoid and the rotator cuff, there is adhesions in between. So you need to release that adhesion circumferentially, specifically from the coracoid to the posterior part of the scapular spine. So you need to release that tissue. So this is called as a superior capsular release. This increases the excursion of the cuff. Footprint modulation we have covered. And then there are three advanced procedures which are called as the anterior interval slide, posterior interval slide, and superior capsular reconstruction. So we'll come into that. So what is the anterior interval slide? Now this term is basically given by another stalwart of shoulder arthroscopy, Dr. Burkhardt. So anterior interval slide means to increase the excursion of the cuff, you release the tissue of the cuff from the anterior part of the supraspinatus. So the supraspinatus, the anterior part you release. So basically this is the area of the rotator interval. This is the area between the supraspinatus and the subscapularis. Now anterior interval slide is of two types. We will be coming on to that. But there are two types of anterior interval slide. One is a pure anterior interval slide and one is anterior interval slide in continuity. So if you have an intact subscapularis tendon, then you do anterior interval slide. That means you separate the soft tissue between the supraspinatus and the subscapularis. And anterior interval slide in continuity, where you just leave a portion of the tissue connecting the supra and the subscapula. So we'll be coming on to that. Posterior interval slide. Now posterior interval slide is the slide or is the release between the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus. So can you tell me how is supraspinatus and infraspinatus named and what are the anatomical landmarks? What does supraspinatus mean? What does infraspinatus mean?
It's coming from the supraspinous notch.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So there is a spine of the scapula on the back of the scapula, and the muscle which originates on the scapula above the spine of the scapula is the supraspinatus. Supraspinatus. The muscle which is originating on the scapula below the spine of the scapula is called as infraspinatus. So both of these muscles have got different origin, but they have a common insertion. So that means that the supraspinatus arises from the supraspinatus fossa, the infraspinatus arises from the infraspinatus fossa. But they have a common insertion. So you can differentiate the muscle at origin, but when they insert on the greater tuberosity. So when they insert on the greater tuberosity, you cannot differentiate between the two. So where supraspinatus ends and where infraspinatus starts, you cannot delineate because the fibers will be merging like this. Okay. Now these are anatomical variations. So initially it was thought that there are straight insertions. So infraspinatus comes like this, supraspinatus comes like this. So then there was a great work by Dr. Sugaya, and he taught us that it is not a straight line insertion. Basically the infraspinatus has a more broader insertion, so it fans out. So I'll be coming on to that. And then there is a procedure which is called as a superior capsular reconstruction. Now release of the cuff tissue is important. Now this is the inferior lamina. So this is the superior lamina and this is the inferior lamina. This is the anchor fixation. And this is a trans-equivalent tape lock technique. So we will be coming on to this on the workshop also. Do you know about what are the generations of rotator cuff repair? How the rotator cuff repair started?
As in single row double row or?
Yes.
Single row double row, that's why.
The earliest, the most ancient or the most oldest repairs were open repairs or the mini open repairs. So that was the eldest era of rotator cuff repair, and at that time anchors were not available. So what the technique was to use this is called as a trans-osseous technique. So what people will do is they will do an open approach or a mini open approach, and they will put drill holes into the humerus, and they will pass the threads through the rotator cuff, and they will repair the tissue. So these are the earliest repairs. These are the open or mini open repair before the advent of anchors. Then when the anchors start, people started using anchors for a open repairs also. So for initial most repairs was trans-osseous. When arthroscopy started, there were development, and there was a very fast development in repairs of rotator cuff. So the first generation repairs were, as you told, was a single row repair. So single row repair, as I told you, Dr. Steve Snyder propagated that. And the single row repairs means that you put an anchor and you put all the sutures and tie it on that anchor. And if that area is exposed on the greater tuberosity, you made small punctures, that is called as a Grimson tool. So this is the first generation, and this was a single row repair. If you do it properly, it is a good technique, it is not a bad technique. So important thing here is that no repair is bad. It is not that first generation is inferior to second generation, but this is how the repair progressed. Now after that came the second generation of the rotator cuff repair. Second generation was double row, but it was not linked. Double row unlinked. So what that essentially means is you put an anchor for a medial row. This was the time when the knotless anchors were not available. So you put an anchor on the medial row, you put an anchor on the lateral row. You put all the mattress suture on the middle row and simple suture on the lateral row and repair it. So you will have a footprint coverage. So the difference between first generation and second generation is the first generation is a point fixation and the second generation is an area fixation. So because you have two anchors, so you have a healing between the two anchors. So it was a point fixation versus an area fixation. After that comes the third generation. Third generation is a linked double row. So linked double row means you put middle row sutures, anchors, you put your sutures on the middle row, you tie them, and then you repair those sutures on the lateral row with a knotless anchors. So we will be doing that in the workshop. But that is basically you put the middle row sutures, tie them, and put it on the lateral. So it was a very much accepted technique, very much popularized technique. It was very much technique which was industry friendly. So because many of the anchors are used, but and very successful also. But this technique has one drawback. So the drawback was it increases or it strangulates the cuff because you tie the sutures on the middle row and then put all the threads which are there on the middle row onto the lateral row. So there is an area of devascularization. So the area where the sutures are tied and then you compress it, you have an area of devascularization. So even if the repair anatomically is very strong, but somehow the biological healing was not that good because of the strangulation or devascularization of the tissue. So to improve that concept, the tape lock concept was developed. So tape lock, what is a tape lock concept? It is a fourth generation technique. And here we are using again two rows, medial row, lateral row. And we are tying the lateral row, we are putting the lateral row without tying sutures on the middle row. So we are using the tape on the middle row. So this is a tape lock technique. You can see there are 3 tapes, 1, 2 and 3. And these 3 tapes are integrated on the lateral row without tying the medial row sutures. So that prevents the devascularization or strangulation of the cuff tissue, thereby decreasing the chances of what is called as a Choi type 2 re-tears. So there is a re-tear classification. So if you do a rotator cuff tear, and some of them may fail. So the average rates of re-tears are close to around 5%. So whatever the rotator cuff tears we repair, close to about 5% of these repairs may fail or may retear. And these retear are classified into two types by Cho. The tear can be from the tendon bone interface, that is Choi type 1, and these are the patients in which you can go in and do a re-repair. But there is a Choi type 2 tear where the tear is at the muscle tendon junction, at that area where the medial row is tight. So that means that you have a tendon tissue which is revascularized, strangulated on the lateral side, which is there, which will be there on the footprint, and the tear is there on the medial aspect of that. So these are bad tears because you cannot re-repair it. Why? So you cannot repair muscle.
Yeah.
So basically these are the patients who are not amenable to re-repairs because you have only muscle, you don't have any tendon.
So do Choi type 2 tears occur in a single row repair?
Less likely because single row repair does not have that strangulation effect. You will just tie the sutures on that. So Choi type 2 are basically very classically described for a third generation double row repair in which you tie the middle row and then you repair it back on the lateral row. So anatomically speaking, when people do lab studies, this type of repair was the strongest repair.
Yeah.
But biologically, the Choi type 2 tears were seen more in that subgroup of patients.
Is that why the fraternity is now moving back to single row?
So that's why. So that is why some people are now favoring more of single row, maybe of the second generation unlinked double row. And this fourth generation is you follow some principles of the third generation. You do a double row repair without strangulating the cuff so that the strangulation or re-tears type 2 is avoided. So this is called as what we call as a trans-osseous equivalent, and this is called as a tape lock technique. So if you see this third generation, you tie the knots and you put it like this, and this is the fourth generation that you don't tie the knot and you repair it like that. So this effect of strangulation here is reduced. So it is extrapolated that this will have a more biological chances of healing as compared to fourth generation is biologically better as compared to a third generation. So this is a fourth generation repair with tapes without knots. Without knots. So you tie this like this, so there are no knots here.
So is it has to be with tape only or can be done with the fiber wire?
So for a knotless repair to be done, fourth generation repair to be done, you need to do the repair with a non-sliding suture. So any suture which is sliding, you cannot put a tension on the lateral row. Because this video is basically a video describing a posterior interval slide for a massive tear which is retracted. And if you see here, this is the glenoid, this is the humeral head, and this is the cuff. You can see the cuff is at the level of glenoid. So what we are doing is we are putting two tension sutures here. So this is the penetrating suture grasper, and this is coming from a modified Nevaser body. And we are passing these sutures. So what we do is, this is a very tight tissue. It is not coming to the insertion. So when you are pulling it, it is coming, but it is coming under very much tension. So to reduce the tension, as I told you, we will be using two traction sutures. So this is the first traction suture, this is through the supraspinatus, and this is the second traction suture, this is through the infraspinatus. And we need to cut the tissue in between the two. This is called as a posterior interval slide. So earlier we used to do a straight cut, but based on the Sugaya's article, we have covered our cup cut in a J-shaped fashion. So now we cut like this, like a J-shaped fashion. So this is with a scissor, we cut it. So you split between the supra and the infra, and this will increase the excursion by about 1 to 2 centimeter usually. So what we have done is we are cutting it with the scissors. You can use other methods also here, but you cut between the supra and the infra. And when you cut between the supra and infra, you will see that the excursion of the cuff will increase by about a centimeter, about 2 centimeters. So you can see now that this was less before, but it is coming more. So the excursion of the cuff or the pull of the cuff is now increasing. Okay.
So this does it only work? The interval slides only work when either the subscapularis or the infraspinatus are intact, or could it also work in a tear which involves supra and infraspinatus both?
So this this is basically there are two spectrum or two subgroups of cuffs. So one is a anterior base cuff tear and one is a posterior base cuff tear. So one group is called as an anterior superior tear and one group is called as a posterior superior tear. A posterior superior tear by definition includes supraspinatus and infraspinatus both. An anterior base tear or anterior superior tear will include a biceps subluxation or biceps tear, number one. You will have subscapularis tear from the top and you will have the supraspinatus tear from the most anterior margin. So most anterior part of the subscap or most superior part of the subscap and most anterior part of the supraspinatus top. So this technique, the posterior interval slide, is for a posterior based tear. So it is basically for a posterior superior tear. For the anterior superior tear, you can do a anterior interval slide in continuity. So what does in continuity means? That you just keep the tissue most lateral, which is connecting the supra and the subscap. Medial to that, you release everything in the rotator cuff interval, so that there is an increase in expression. So probably we'll come on to that. So transosseous equivalent, I am coming to that. So transosseous equivalent is basically a fourth generation tear, a fourth generation repair technique. It repairs the tissue onto the bone and with minimal knot time. So here we are doing very less of the knot time thing. The result is quick and low profile fixation, and it gives a more sort of a compression without strangulation. That is the concept of a tape lock technique, and there are now many papers which support this particular technique. Now interval slide, as I told you, is described by Toro. Toro described this in open repairs, and then Burkhardt basically popularizes it, as I told you. So anterior interval slide release the coracohumeral ligament plus the tissues on the anterior aspect of the supraspinatus. The posterior interval slide is between the supra and the infracipral. And this both, if you do, it can increase the excursion for about 3 centimeters. So like if this is the tear, massive contracted cuff tear, if you release it from here, this is anterior interval slide. So this is the anterior interval slide we have done here, and then if you do it here, you repair this to this, and then you do margin convergence here. So anterior interval slide, then you supraspinatus repair and side to side repair.
So this is not in continuity?
This is in continuity.
This is okay, because only the medial, the lateral.
This is anterior interval slide. This is not in continuity.
Not in continuity.
Not in continuity. We'll come on to the continuity. Yeah. So this is the pure anterior interval slide, and this separates the supraspinatus from the anterior subscapularis. Okay, and this gap is filled by the side to side suture. So that is called as a margin convergence. Now here anterior interval slide, posterior interval slide, repair, and then margin convergence.